Let's talk about who wins and who loses with this removal of Nicolas Maduro. If you look at Colombia, which has an issue with extensive Venezuelan migration, there's I think something like 2 million Venezuelan migrants currently living here. In the short term, nothing's going to happen. I don't mean nothing's going to happen, but it's not like everybody's going to get up and go back tomorrow or anything like that. A lot of Venezuelans are still very fearful because the old regime, even though Maduro has been removed, is still in power. If we look on the other side of Venezuela, the next country we come to is Guyana. And Venezuela has been threatening Guyana because Guyana just found a tremendous oil reserve, and now we have companies that are there. Guyana has the fastest growing economy in the world, and since that discovery, the Maduro regime has been threatening Guyana, saying, going back to like some old claim from the 1800s or whatever, saying, hey, all this land is ours, all this ocean territory is ours, and we're going to take it. And Guyana only has about 800,000 people in their whole national population. And so Venezuela under Maduro has been threatening Guyana. Guyana now will feel a sense of protection. We've written about this in our Finance Americas publication, how Guyana has reached out. And even though in the past it was never a real close ally of the United States, the country was founded by kind of, when it got its independence from the UK, the first people in charge were kind of far left socialists. So it's never really been, up until now, a close US ally. But then when they made these discoveries, they realized we better get some powerful friends or our whole sovereignty is under threat. So they've done that. And they are a winner now because this move protects them to a large degree from the Venezuelan threats. And Venezuela has been very explicit with these threats, saying that a large part of Guyana, the part where they found all of these oil reserves, belongs to Venezuela. Now, there's no real case in international law for that. It's not like they have a legitimate claim or anything like that. But this is something that Maduro cooked up, and Guyana is certainly a winner. If we look throughout the rest of Latin America, we will see that it's interesting because the new leadership in Chile, we can predict that they will be more sympathetic. They are kind of more sympathetic to Trump and that kind of thing. So we can expect them to applaud this. Same thing with people like Bukele in Nicaragua, not Nicaragua, but El Salvador, because he is not only a Trump ally, but it fits into their natural ideology. Trinidad and Tobago, which took a bet on the United States in this conflict with Maduro, will come out a winner in this because they bet on the United States and supported the United States. They are only literally 7 miles off the coast of Venezuela. And they are also a country that has a lot of energy resources and things like that. So you can expect this to be a net positive for Trinidad and Tobago. If we go throughout the region, it's certainly a negative for Cuba because it showed how easy it was. The U.S. did not have to invade like the U.S. did in Panama, but really just went in there and snatched Maduro out of there like a police operation, which is very embarrassing for the Venezuelan military. It basically shows them as a bunch of incompetent boobs. It shows them as not a real defense force in any sense of the word. But if we look at now, Brazil has a border with Venezuela. Lula is a kind of a leftist president, but he has not really ruled like some kind of crazy revolutionary or anything like that. Whether you like him or not, the people who don't like him, their worst case scenarios, their nightmares never came true. The people who do like him, he didn't become this revolutionary populist leader. Well, he is a populist leader, but Brazil has enough institutionalism that he didn't like remake the country into some kind of a Marxist paradise like maybe some people were hoping. I think that even though he probably won't say this, it becomes a net positive for Brazil because the potential is for stability on the border between Brazil and Venezuela. And that stability, if we can get rid of mafia groups, if we can return to a rule of law or things like that, is a net positive for the region and for the governability in the region. So we get away from caudillo strongman leaders and things like that to countries that are republics. And they can be led by the right, they can be led by the left, but the idea is that there is an orderly transition of power, some predictability, and the strength of institutions over the strength of strongman, kind of crazy revolutionary leaders. I mentioned Cuba. This is a threat to Cuba, not in the sense that the U.S. might necessarily go in there tomorrow and try to remove the Cuban leadership, but it serves as kind of a warning to say, don't try any of your adventurism. Way back in the past with Grenada, Cuba was on some different adventures, and not just Grenada, but other countries in the Caribbean, and the U.S. counteractions to what Cuba was doing in Grenada put a stop to that. But it serves as kind of a warning to say, you better stick to your knitting or you could be next, because you see how easy we did this and how easy we can come and do this to you. So that sends a message there. Further afield, China is a definite loser in this. We had Chinese tankers on the way to Venezuela that stopped and turned around and went to Nigeria already this morning, according to a report I read in the Wall Street Journal. Russia, who has been an ally of Venezuela, this is an embarrassment for them. Venezuela flies MiG fighters. Those fighters might fall into U.S. hands or U.S.-friendly hands. So, I mean, I doubt that there's a whole lot of intelligence that can be gathered from that, because it's not like they're cutting-edge fighters and there's a lot to learn, but the U.S. might want to look at their radars and different things like that. But Russia, that certainly weakens their influence in the region. And so that's kind of who wins and loses in the short term. Now, a big wild card is Maduro has been removed, but the government is still in place. His cohort, his people around him, Cartel de Soles, the generals and things like that, not only are they still in place as of this morning when this happened, I'm reporting, what is this, January 3rd, but they're in a precarious position, because if they fall, their lives are in danger, either by the very same Venezuelan people who they've been oppressing and who they've been kind of ripping off and stealing all the natural resources from. But also, if they escape, where do they go? Go to Cuba, perhaps? Go to Russia, perhaps? I'm sure that the top people have been squirreling away money and things like that. But if they fall, they're going to fall hard. So they either must cling to power or get the hell out of Dodge. And it remains to be seen which one of those scenarios happen. We either have a scenario where the people in power, Delcy Rodriguez and Diosdado Cabello and these people who were the henchmen around Maduro, try to cling to power. And if Trump or if the U.S. screws this up, they somehow stay in power. And then you get a Cuba situation, which is improbable, but it is possible. Or not so much a Cuba situation, because that very much was led by the strongman and Fidel. But you get a situation where the regime has not been successfully removed, and then we either have to escalate and the U.S. has to go in there with some kind of invasion or something like that, or the people leave on their own out of pressure or out of guarantees or something like that. Now, even if that happens in that best case scenario next step, how do you go from zero institutionalism into what really has to be nation building and rebuild the institutions that have been destroyed, from the courts to the Congress to the municipal, local governments and things like that. Venezuela is basically a lawless mafia state, and I don't care if you're on the right or the left, that's just what it is. So how do you build something that never really existed? Because even though Venezuela was a republic, a dysfunctional one, but it had institutions that were very weak. The reason that Chavez was able to take power initially is because the Venezuelan institutions were so weak. The court system was weak, the legislature was weak, and he was able to co-opt these things and take those over. So it's not like they were strong before, even though you did have some kind of democracy, which is how he got elected. But you've got to build this from nothing. It's not like in Colombia, where you actually have strong institutionalism, which is why Petro cannot do the things that he wants to do, because there are courts that prevent that. There is a Congress that prevents that. There are opposition parties. It is a federalist system that governors oppose him and mayors oppose him. And so he can't just run roughshod over those like Chavez did in Venezuela. So the task is harder than people realize, because things have to pretty much be built from zero. A lot of the Venezuelan intellectuals who could contribute to this are already out of the country as exiles, as refugees. So do they come back? When do they come back? Is it safe? Even if it's safe for them, how do they make a living? Right? So it's going to be harder than, it's not like Chavez has removed everything, it's going to go back to flowers and rainbows. It's not going to work that way. The crime situation is just dangerous for a Venezuelan to be on the street in places like Caracas or Maracaibo. So there's a lot of work to be done, and the Venezuelan people will have to take the lead on that when the time comes. But I want to emphasize that time isn't even here yet, because the existing regime, even though the head has been taken away, the existing regime is still in power. Things may move quickly, things may move unpredictably, or even worse, things may move slowly. And short of a full-scale invasion, they may remain embedded in power. And so we'll see what happens. And so that's the case. Let's keep an eye on things. I wanted to bring you this update right away. You know, the day that the events and things like that have jumped off, but we promise to keep you updated here. Thanks a lot. Subscribe, like, you know the routine. If you're listening to this on audio, be sure to give us a review. Again, be sure to subscribe. It helps us, and let us help you, keep you informed. Thanks a lot. Happy New Year.